I'm Matt Carey, documentary editor at Deadline, and we are in the Deadline studio at the Toronto International Film Festival. One of the films premiering here is Paul Anka, His Way, and we are joined by the film's director, John Maggio, and by the legend, the extraordinary singer-songwriter, Paul Anka. Thank you so much. It's a real thrill to have you both here.
Thank you very much. Good to be back home again.
Yeah, you're an Ottawa native.
I'm an Ottawa boy and a struggling singer in Toronto years ago.
And it all started here and then quickly shifted to New York, as we see when you were a teenager. Yeah. I mean, this life, can you believe that you have lived this life?
I can't believe I'm still here talking to you. I left home at 15, $100 in my pocket, went to New York, got very lucky with Diana, and the dream has continued. And here I am back home again, where I always like to get back to because it's a special place. And we're here with a film, which I've been working on with John for about 1.5 years now. And it's always good to get back, and this is a new one for me. Usually I'm promoting records and music. Now I'm promoting a film.
What is His Way? What is the way that Paul Anka goes about his life and his music career?
Paul is one of the most successful music artists in history. His songs have been recorded by every major legend of the 20th and 21st century. And I don't know, the drive, I think, comes from having been born in Canada and moved to New York. And he had an incredible work ethic. That blend of innate talent and ability to write melody and lyric, that comes from somewhere else. We don't know. But the drive, I think, is from the fact that he was born here, came to America, and as he says in the film, that big elephant in the room that was America, he wanted to come down and conquer it, and he's been doing it for many decades.
It takes incredible bravery to do that. One of the most touching parts of the film, I think, is to hear about your relationship with your mom and your dad, and your mother very sadly passed away when you were only 18. Mm-hmm. And you got to write a beautiful song about her in tribute to her. What did it mean to you that she saw your success? I mean, you were so young, and you...
Yeah. Well, it meant a lot. It didn't mean enough because it didn't last too long. She was very supportive. Living in Ottawa, back then it was, 200,000 people. Canada, as I said, was in the shadow of the elephant, the U.S. We had no industry per se. Television was just starting. Music was in its infancy stage. But she worked. She worked at Sears Roebuck. My dad worked. But she knew that I had the passion and what I wanted to do, and she'd give me the money to go buy the records and everything. And, my dad wouldn't get home till late at night, and she'd be always there convincing him that I was focusing on music. And they allowed me to do that, and she was really the one that turned the tide to allow me to go down to New York on a Easter break with $100, and she was the one that said, "No, let him go, Dad. He's got something." And she used to drive me over to Quebec. You remember back then there was liquor over there, and the buzz was over there, and we were dry in Ontario, so the fun was in Quebec. So I'd go over in her little Austin Healey, and she would drive me, other than the one night I stole it for an hour and got picked up by the Mounties. But I'd go over there and win about $20. So she knew everything that I was into. So to please her and to have that success, and then to watch her every day take her diabetic shots, which was not fun, and then to slowly see the decline as I started to rise in this dream that hit me all of a sudden. It wasn't fun, but I was committed to what I was doing. And then when I lost her, it was obviously a very traumatic time in my life. It's part of life, unfortunately. But in answer to your question, I hope she saw enough. I mean, my first paycheck, I bought her a nice home down in New Jersey where I had to live. She was always, we had a small house. We weren't rich people. So I did everything I could for her and spent the time with her, and she was my motivation. And look, I'm not the only one. People lose parents, people lose siblings, people lose friends, and it's just part of the life, and you got to get up and do it again. And one day we'll all meet somewhere down the road,
Indeed, indeed. The catalog of songs, 900 published songs, and who knows, I think maybe only Dolly Parton might rival you in terms of, productivity, but songs that are so much a part of us. And some songs that people don't realize you wrote, I think.
Da,
like
da,
the-
da, da.
That's what I was going to say.
I felt it coming out of your bones.
Well, and songs that you wrote for other artists like
Yeah.
Tom Jones, She's a Lady, and that you performed with him. We see a wonderful clip of you guys doing a duet of that. But yes, the Tonight Show thing with Johnny Carson. It's like, oh my goodness, Paul Anka also wrote that. You know, the drive to do that, as John, you were referring to, where does that come from? I mean, and you're such a decisive person. That's his way, I think. So decisive.
You know, when you start that young and everybody's kind of against you in a sense, you know, people don't realize what it was like back there trying to make it, especially out of Canada, a country I was proud of, and nobody really cared about Canadians. You know, we were struggling along, and I'm going, no, we're special up here, right? So the point was, it was the drive, it was the conviction, and it was the passion of something that I loved. In answer to your question, you know, when I sat and wrote My Way, which took 5 hours, the words, I said, where the hell did this come from? You know, I was motivated by Sinatra because he was quitting. My life was with him and the mafia. And one day my thing was to write a song. He's quitting. It came out of me in 5 hours. And I really started to subscribe to the dynamic of something spiritual is in this universe for a lot of us that write. Because a lot of the guys that I know and that are writers, sometimes they don't know where the hell it's coming from. So thus, what I'm saying to you, you work at your craft, you try to improve as you go along, but there's something spiritual, there's something up there that's happening when you're doing that. So you just stay committed, keep your nose clean, which I was taught by the boys, and you do what you do, you know, and then it
And
works
when
out.
you say in the mafia, you were.
No, I wasn't in the mafia.
You
I
were.
worked for the mafia.
You
I was
were.
too young to be in the mafia.
Thank goodness.
Well, no,
Thank
you have to realize when you look at study the history of America or a lot of these countries, you know, the mafia or whatever you want to call them, they ran a lot of the commerce, a lot of the business. You know, the great thing about America, Canada, they came from all over. Thus, they ran the music business. They ran the nightclubs, so you had no choice but to work for them. But once you got in there and they liked you, and they would do this and behave and do this, you go, yes, sir, but you're making money for them, so they're not going to touch you. Nobody muscled me. I was too young. I mean, they were scratching their head what the hell I was doing there anyway. 18-year-old in Vegas and all of that. But working for them, I must tell you, was an absolute experience. And when you look at it in modern times, you have mafia in all cases, even politicians, it's a mafia. A lot of these countries. So back then it was the guys who ultimately got old and all of that kind of diffused itself into where we're at today.
Yeah. Distribution for this film. I know it's
Yeah.
at this point an acquisition title. What can you tell us about that, John, and what your hopes are for the film?
My hopes are that the most people, anybody that sees the film is going to fall in love with it. There are all these gee whiz moments, as you describe, that we just like, you can't believe, you know, the career that Paul's had and the legends he's been around and worked with. My hope is that we premiere here and we generate some good buzz, and I have no doubt that you know, we'll be on streamers and in theaters sometime soon.
You've been embraced by the TikTok generation. We hear the cover by Doja Cat. And then also we hear about remarkable thing, you made these songs with Michael Jackson that were not released, but then eventually came out after his passing. So people have embraced you now, and that's got to feel very special because, man, the music business, from everything I know about it, it's tough.
It ain't what it used to be at all. TikTok, look, as I say in the film, if you told me 10 years ago there was going to be a TikTok, and I'd say, what are you TikTok? So we live in that fast-moving society that we're in. But when that all started, a bunch of kids came to my door because I've got a 19-year-old son, and they started singing "Put Your Head on My Shoulder" at the door. I'm going, how do you know the song? They said, TikTok. Well, I didn't know what TikTok was. I said to my son, Ethan, what the hell is TikTok? He said, well, Dad, da, da, da. So when I look at that, I had nothing to do with it. You know, you just write songs. There's a black hole between you and that public, and I don't know how it affects people until you get in front of them singing. But with TikTok, for whatever reason, some songs last. They've embraced it. It's out there. Now where I never had any kids at the show, teenagers. Now I got 30% young people with albums and screaming, and I'm trying to remind them how old I am, even though I don't live my age. I don't believe in the numbers of all of that. It's something that, you know, we know how important an entity TikTok is. It's not going to go away anyway soon. But you're grateful. You know, now My Way's got legs on TikTok. Now there was an article in Forbes. I don't know. You know, you're grateful, you're humbled by it, whatever. You know, human beings are human beings, and I relate to all of them. But when I look at TikTok, I look at it as a force in where it stands in terms of culturally and where we're at today, for better or for worse.
Yeah, well, I think better in the case of you, certainly, and for, you know, it's the way people are communicating and gathering, and so it's very exciting. And we see you in the film with the incredible pipes you still have, which is amazing, and the connection with the audience, that is something very special.
It really is. And I have to say, when I started making the film, when Paul and I met and we were talking about ideas for the film, I thought I was going to just really settle down with the guy who wrote 900 songs, many of them chart toppers, and we were going to get really cerebral about the craft of songwriting. But there is this sort of spiritual sense of his just natural talent and how you create the song. But there was a moment in Japan when I was with Paul playing a sold-out Tokyo Dome. Okay, thousands and thousands of people, many who didn't speak English, and Paul enters through the back of the stadium. And we followed him, and the crowd just erupted, and they wanted to reach out and touch Paul. And then, note for note, singing every song along with him. And so I realized the film itself had transmuted. It was going to be, you know, I recognized the life force and Paul's power on stage, and how much of a pure entertainer. He's not just a songwriter, he's a pure entertainer. And so that helped me sort of shape the film in a different way.
Oh, it's one of the great moments in there. We also see the incredible shot of you as a kid in a box, and you explain that you had to be snuck out of concerts in Japan because you were so popular back then. But that's a story for another day, or for those who will see the film. So I want to thank you both. Paul Anka, the legendary singer-songwriter, it's a thrill to have you here, and director John Maggio. Paul Anka, His Way is the film at the Toronto International Film Festival.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.